Welcome everybody. This panel is entitled Turn Off the Stereotypes, Challenging Exclusion in Media, hosted by KUCR Riverside. My name is Eddie Valencia, I'm the moderator. In our panel, I'll just start with who's right next to me is Dexter Thomas, KUCR alumni, Fulbright Scholar, shared a Pulitzer Prize for the team reporting on the 2015 San Bernardino mass shooting while at the LA Times, currently a producer, director, and longtime correspondent for Vice News, and host of the program Reset on Vice TV. Then we got right next to me, Max Burgos, KUCR alumni, currently full partner and head of comedy at Agency for the Performing Arts, one of the largest diversified talent agencies in the entertainment industry. Burgos navigates the careers of some of the most influential comedians in the industry and received an Emmy nomination for Believe the Izzard Story. We have Tana Jonas, KUCR alumni, former cast member of the PBS television show Road Trip Nation. She's also an avid record collector and DJ of Global Rarities. Currently, she's a contributor for the vinyl culture resource in Sheep's Clothing based in LA, and a resident DJ with Radio Alhara in Bethlehem, Radio Meanwood in the UK, and Hyde FM in San Francisco. And we have René Contreras, well-established as an advocate for local and Latinx music artists, not only from the US, but from Central and South America. Contreras is the founder, producer of Viva Pomona, an ongoing concert series of up-and-coming local and international music artists in downtown Pomona. He's a DJ at DubLab and the curator of the Sonora stage at the Coachella Music and Arts Festival, as well as a member of the Golden Voice team. And the panel organizers, real quick, shout out to our team, KUCR Associate Director Elliot Fong, KUCR Student Manager Precious Fashikin, KUCR's Tina Bold, and KUCR Administrative Coordinator Monica Taylor, and of course, everyone's favorite KUCR Director Louis Vandenberg. Want to remind everybody, if you have questions as this goes, please type them in the chat. So I'll begin the panel. The keyword, I guess, that we focused on was diversity. It's defined as the practice of including, involving people from a range of different social, ethnic backgrounds and different gender, sexual identities, so on. Starting it off, the idea is how does diversity in media impact the industry that you work in? And we could start with Dexter. You've been reporting with Vice. Louis described it to me as exploring the intersection of politics and culture. How has media impacted your field of work?
Yeah, I mean, I can be brief with it because I'd love to hear what other people have to say. But so my actual experience in quote unquote, so we'll call it journalism, right? So I was at the LA Times for about a year. I've been at Vice for about 4, and I have noticed a difference just in terms of who's in the building and who's getting called some of the shots, right? So just as an easy example, when I was at LA Times, there was an editor who would not allow me to use the word racist in an article. I was writing about something that was clearly racist, and he said, "Oh, how about stereotyped or something softer?" And it's just, look, I'm going to use the word racism. And you actually wouldn't let me use it. And so somewhere out there's an article where if you read it, you can tell that I was trying to use the word racist, and he wouldn't let me do it. Vice, that has not been the case. Not that Vice is a perfect company by any stretch, none is, but I have not had that trouble. And I think some of that has been because, not only this, but some of that has been because they're just different people, a much wider range of people, a much wider range of experiences, much wider range of socioeconomic backgrounds coming in. Not everybody who's in there is necessarily a classically trained journalist, right? I don't have a J school degree. I don't have a journalism school degree. There's people coming at it from a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different, life experiences. And so I think I have noticed, and I'll just say this, that I've noticed even just in 2 different newsrooms, I have noticed the ability of somebody to make actually not only quality work, but work that I think is truthful, is directly affected by the amount of different perspectives that's in the room. That's what I'd say.
That's a good transition, I think, for Max. The question for you is, you work at a high level in the industry. I think an industry that has had a lot of gatekeepers and barriers to BIPOC, and I think is now being broken with I watched this like Dave Chappelle, Mark Twain comedy special where they were giving him an award, and the guy said, like, back then there was only room for one Black comedian, where the joke was, well, now there's room for three. So how does media and the work you do, how does diversity play into it?
Well, I mean, this is kind of a fine point, but I think Chappelle is also speaking to the idea of kind of the live business, which is a little bit harder to kind of put your finger on, because traditionally there was a Black or African American kind of circuit for live comedy, and unfortunately it was supported by mostly white owners, white promoters, and so it was a little bit separate from kind of the mainstream film and TV business, in that sense, right? Because and people like Eddie Murphy and even Martin Lawrence, once they became movie stars, they stopped touring because it was really a bad experience that a lot of people had to go through, on the road. And the money just wasn't worth it. And I think that's definitely changed and opened up on the live side. I straddle both the live and the film and TV side. So I think the thing that's more relevant for this discussion is kind of media and the film and TV thing. So I guess back to the original question. I mean, to me, I think kind of when looking at this, I think there's a normative kind of discussion on how things should be. But I also think it's really important to look at like what works. And I think that's the thing that gets left off the table a lot of times in these discussions, like what actually affects change. And to me, the last 2 years have been really eye-opening, because it seems that, like media is driven by corporations, right? And that's what makes it hard sometimes, right? But that also is what makes things possible at the $100 million, $200 million scale, right? No one's making an indie movie for $100 million. So, that's part of the necessity of that part of the business, and television and Netflix and all these things. But it seems that the companies have become a lot more responsive, because people's voices, either people are actually speaking up, it's become an important thing, and everyone criticizes mainstream media, but the media is the one that's been picking up on a lot of these stories of people being left out, of Me Too, all of these kind of things. And they've really rapidly changed how the business is. And I mean, the exciting thing for me is not just who's on the screen, but who's behind the screen, right? The rapid and, I think, valid acceleration of that. There's more Asian showrunners, there's more Black showrunners, there's more Black directors, there's more Black writers. I mean, in the 80s, there'd be a movie with an all African American cast, and there wouldn't be, it was all white faces behind the camera. White faces writing the dialogue. And so that's the thing that's really exciting to me, is it's a slow process, and it's been a slow process, but the last few years it's rapidly accelerated. And I think all the groups are getting included, now. It's everyone's looking around and going, well, should you have a show about a trans person and the actor's not trans? And should you have a show about a trans person and the writer isn't trans, right? So I don't know if that answers the question, but to me, it seems that in a good way, there's some market forces at work, and that's had a positive change. But then it's also that balance of having people that care and that want to do the right thing, that normative kind of idea in places of power. And that's the tricky part. Like, how do you get the old people that don't want change out quicker?
I think you made a good point. It's illuminating. Love him or hate him, Biden said that he wants a cabinet that looks like America in terms of ethnic gender diversity. So Tana, a couple of years ago, you did a lot of traveling with Road Trip Nation. What is your sense of race in America, and how does your work as a DJ, who's now global, play into your perspective on this idea of diversity?
Well, I think for a long time, I felt like a strange fish in a small pond where I just didn't make sense at all. And what I found is there's many places where I do make sense. And so I think there's this internalized kind of like maybe imposter syndrome, or just like a distrust of your creative taste that happens. I think it happens for a lot of people. But there was luckily there was a resiliency that I do think is just in my psyche, or like how I just live organically. But it was phenomenal when I actually found my people, and they're like all over. First of all, I found out at UCR actually that I get along best with like third culture kids or people with multiple who have come from like multiple backgrounds. So my family are first generation or immigrants from Ethiopia, and I generally just get better along with people with these interesting cultural narratives. Like they could be even born in the United States, but they're in these weird cultural kind of like two worlds at once, three worlds at once, that sort of thing. And so that's the one thing, that's something I found for myself is finding communities where I make sense. That's why with international radio, and I highly recommend everyone, because everyone here I think is DJs, to put together mixes and put them out on radio, like online radio stations that are happening all over the world. They're everywhere and they're so cool. And you can try out new sounds and expose yourself to new communities. And that's something that I found really, really valuable. Like, one of my shows is in Meanwood. I have another one in London, Bethlehem, and Radio O'Hara, that they're centered in Bethlehem, but they have other headquarters in Beirut, and Tokyo. And they said to me over New Year's, of course, pandemic, we couldn't get together, but Youssef, who's the director, was saying, oh, next New Year's Eve, let's all get together in Jordan and have like the country Jordan and have a celebration together. And it's those type of experiences where I felt really seen. So that's a thing, because when I was traveling around America, I never saw myself, to be honest. Like the United States is like a beautiful cultural experience or experiment, and I find it's very valuable to be here, especially considering my background. If I was born in Ethiopia, I know my resources would be very different. But while you're here, like you really do have this like access to this globalized, especially little things like having an American passport, being able to speak English, which is like one of the most commonly spoken languages in the world, things like that. So I feel like that's a little bit meandering my answer, but that's kind of like what I found for myself, like traveling around America, traveling the world, and having a global kind of connection through music.
Appreciate that very much. Moving over to René, who is the only person on the panel that's not a KUCR alumni, but is himself a DJ. And I think like very important in the movement of independent artists in SoCal. You have your own stage at Coachella, René, that you helped curate, and you took, I think, a lot of Latin American music artists and put them in front of audiences that would love it. So how open was the audience and the artists you booked, and what was your experience in diversifying these platforms like Coachella?
Yeah, it was a very, empowering. I felt very, very lucky to be in that position. But yeah, when they told me that, they just wanted to, just do whatever you want. Like just kind of, you're free to curate the stage in however shape, way, or form that you want to curate it. I thought of many bands. I thought of Downtown Boys. They're like a punk political band based in Rhode Island. That's out here, and yeah, they played, and they've been very vocal just about the current state of the country, and at the time, and they still are, but they were just very, very vocal about just the current state of the country. And I felt like giving them the platform to play a music festival was very important. I also had bands from Argentina, we've had bands from Central America, bands from Chile. We had Eddie's band, Quita Penas, who, they brought like a whole other stratosphere of music into the music festival, because Eddie does Afro cumbia kind of beats, Afro beats. And he's very, very true to the form of what that music is, and very true to the form of what community is, which is Riverside Inland Empire. And I felt like it was important to take, just different sections of the world and highlight them at a bigger platform. And what I got from that is that maybe it's just, I don't know if it's reverse psychology or anything, but I feel like media and the United States as just as a country influences other countries. So it's almost like it shouldn't be this way. And this is something I've been trying to like, I guess, figure out. But you know, if let's say a local band from Tijuana, Mexico, or a local band from Costa Rica, Ecuador, if they come and play a major festival or just a festival in the United States, then they return to their country, and it's almost like a validation stamp, like you're doing something right. And I'm sure it's like that everywhere else in the world, you know. But you know, I felt like that validation stamp encourages other people in different countries that don't have the resources we have to build community. And you know, I thought that was really important because out of those plays, like maybe like 10 more bands were born, and radio stations were formed, venues were opened, and it's just a powerful platform. I'll use a Señor Kino. That's a band out of the desert in Mexico, out of Sonora. That's the state, and they live in Hermosillo. And they played Coachella, and they came back, and I'd say like maybe there's 15 other bands that exist within the desert of Mexico, and they started their own venue, Pata Negra, which is now closed, but because of the pandemic. But they started their own community. They have a studio. They have a hub where they work out of. They have a studio office. Graphic designers started popping up, and people, the community, were sort of inspired and encouraged to pursue the arts, whether it's art, radio, you know, journalism, and it was really cool. But yeah.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. And you somewhat answered this next question no, which is fine. I'll shoot it over to Dex or Tanner Max. How does diversity in media impact and serve our society, or do you think media companies serve themselves and their public image?
Yes, of course. I don't have much more to add to that. Yes, of course. Yes, does diversity in media impact society? Yeah, of course. I mean, if there's somebody who comes from a background and they're more able to, say in journalism, right, to be more able to accurately report on what's going on, yes, of course, that has an impact, right? Because you're getting a better look at something, you're getting a different look at something that you might get. And then I don't think it's an either or, it's a both and, right? For better, for worse, I think probably for better. You know, easy example, again, when I was at the LA Times, right? Anybody in here who knows me personally knows that I speak a little bit of Spanish, but it's not that great. There were very few people in that newsroom who spoke better Spanish than me. And once again, I was at the Los Angeles Times, and in Los Angeles. I'm gonna leave it at that, right? And so, you know, it was terrible. And so now LA Times is doing much better actually at hiring people who can actually speak a language which a huge population of Los Angeles speaks, right? Now they're doing that because they want to do better reporting? Of course. Are they doing it because they want people to like them better? Of course. It's both. Take that however you like.
Right.
No,
but I think to that point is also, and it kind of answers the question, is they wouldn't be doing it if they thought their business would be doing worse because of it, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Max, please, if you want to add to how it does impact.
Well, no, but I just think it's a good place to kind of compare our media to other countries, you know, that have a little bit, I don't want to call it socialism because that's such a like hot topic word. I mean, maybe not in a university setting, but you know, the UK, Australia, Canada all have, and France, most of Western Europe, they all have state broadcasters, you know, BBC in the UK, Australian broadcast, CBC in Canada. And because they're linked with government funding, I mean, we have a huge like political fracas every year. There's a budget here because the right questions why PBS is being funded, or you know, National Public Radio, and it's such a tiny part of those actual budgets. It's not like those are state organs, but in these other countries, they really are state funded content. And because of that, the government, for better or worse, gets to have a little bit of a mandate on what the content is. But in countries like Canada, I mean, it's basically a law, or it's rules that the broadcasting has to reflect the population. And it also has to be an affirmative in the sense of where they recognize that they've had years of white male-dominated programming, and they're trying to correct it. And so, I mean, we just have to recognize in the U.S. that we don't have that here, right? And so what can we do to influence the companies that do have that message? I mean, part of it is the market speaking, obviously, which I like to go back to, which I think if enough people watch something or get behind it. I don't know if you guys know about this thing called the Gold Club, which like kind of wealthy Asian people are behind, and they want to make sure that there's more programming for Asians, and they go out and when there's a movie made by Asians, or sorry, they buy tickets to make sure the box office is big, to influence these companies, to show them that there's money to be made there. So, no, I don't know. I think my biggest point really is just about, this the other countries and having those mandates that we don't have. So we have to figure out different ways to kind of correct or address it.
Right on. Just a quick reminder to folks, if you have any questions, we're going to hit the Q&A in less than 10 minutes. So keep typing them in. And Tana or René, if you want to add your perspective on how does diversity in media impact and or serve our society?
I was going to say that I think it's so easy to undervalue your experience, and so much of it is just, what's the word for it? It's passive. Like, of course, like it's great if you do the work to understand your cultural heritage, like, or just more about the culture community that you're in. That's all extremely valuable. But just by living, like, you are valuable just from your experiences, whether they be negative or positive. Like, there's an immense amount of knowledge there. And I think it took me a long time to realize that. And so, especially when you are a part of these communities that are underrepresented in the media, or just like by culture at large, I would say, like, me being a child of immigrants, again, like that's, I feel like somebody had mentioned Master of None in the chat. But I mean, there was nothing like that when I was growing up. And there was a strange kind of like, feeling of like not having contact, not being able to contextualize myself in the communities I was in. But it's that kind of like being on a cultural fray that I feel has made my perspective really valuable. And that was not anything that I chose. It was something that I had to kind of do the hard work to get through, and just to kind of psychologically survive. And I do think that's a huge reason why my writing has been able to connect with so many people through In Sheep's Clothing, and why my music connects with so many people as well. It's just, it's a different perspective. So I think it's interesting, Dexter was saying he didn't go to journalism school. I never even took one journalism class. When I joined the In Sheep's Clothing team last winter, I hadn't written anything in 10 years, and I was just kind of like up for the challenge, and it ended up working out really well. But there is like this inherent value you just have just by being who you are. So I think that's an important thing for me to say. And then with that as well, like when you do get into these spaces where you do have a platform that has a bigger, not a bigger frequency, but like has a larger, they can broadcast your voice louder. It makes a huge difference. And the one thing I want to mention, though, there's a lot of places where it is performative. And I've only had a little bit of experience in those type of working environments. But then those are very dangerous. I've had a lot of friends who worked in those type of environments where they kind of have this aura of diversity, but internally it's extremely racist and violent. And in that space, like, it's extremely psychologically detrimental, and you just end up being gaslit all the time. And so it's like extremely violent. So that exists too. And if you experience that, you should leave immediately, because that is very, very, very dangerous.
Yeah. Facts. René.
Yeah, I guess I'll use I don't know if everyone's familiar with like cumbia music, but Los Angeles Azules. They're like a very popular like band out of Iztapalapa in Mexico City. It's like a community, or like a neighborhood. But I remember we hired them to play Coachella, and I feel like a lot of Mexico, they were just really shocked that they were playing, because they're not a rock band, or they're not a top 40 pop star out of Mexico or Latin America. And it's a traditional, like, just it's like cumbia, like stuff you listen to at family parties. And I feel like in terms of the media, it was like a big shock for them because it was like, oh my gosh, like this band is going to play like on the same bills where like the Rolling Stones and like, you know, like Tame Impala or Beyonce are playing. And it was a huge deal. And I feel like that helped like break a lot of stereotypes on music, because I feel especially in Mexico, and it carries over to the United States, like that's like family gathering music, and people like tend to try to like mask their, I don't know, their family, or they, you know, like they try to hide their heritage. Maybe that's just a way of like being Americanized and speaking English and just conforming to, you know, what's cool according to like the gram or whatever. But I felt like that broke a lot of stereotypes within the media and within just people and people within my generation. And it united a lot of people that identified, you know, as just Latin American, Latinx, you know, Mexican, South American, and it was really cool.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, I think you told me when you tried to book them that they couldn't even believe that it was a real phone call.
Yeah, they were just like, whoa, like I can't believe this. Like, well, this is for real. Like, yeah, I was like, it's gonna happen if you want it to happen. Yeah.
Thank you, René, Dexter, Max, Tana, for sharing your perspectives and giving us your time this afternoon. That Zoom in on a weekend. I know it's asking a lot. Appreciate it very much. Folks have been asking questions, and we have Precious Basican who's been moderating the questions. Maybe we can step into addressing some of these. If someone from my team can help me out how we're going to do this. Am I reading them, or can Precious read them?
I got unmuted. Thank you all so much. I do have some of the questions right here. One of our first questions that we received, I have a question. Due to the Asian hate crimes that are happening in our world today, how do you overcome these challenges in college radio? And is it important to recognize these in college radio? And that's from Anna.
Oh. Tana, are you unmuted?
Yes, I'm not. Thank you.
Okay.
I was going to say, even if you have a music show, when I had my show Drinking in the Dark with Avi, I wanted to explore more political issues, and so I started an interview series. And honestly, using your platform to create dialogue is a huge way of helping combat these like really like horrible like I mean, it's something that's been going on for, you know, unfortunately like decades. Like you know, Asian hate in America is like not anything new by any means. But if you can create like a dialogue on whatever platform you have, that's a huge way of just starting a conversation, because so much of it is just helping people talk about it. That's just my one little piece of it that was important to share.
I mean, what I would add to this is, I think one thing we haven't really touched on is about like the media, what it actually does when people watch it in general. And I think that's an important thing, obviously, is just, you know, making sure that people in America, whether they're white or BIPOC or you know, that they see a representation of people and not just in stereotypes. And to me, college radio is a great way to do that, especially, you know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, how many Asian music shows are there that aren't, you know, traditional Asian music or that sense or whatever? So, I mean, I think there's a great opportunity out there to make impressions on people and show people outside of stereotypes.
Yeah.
Love the bird sound in the background, Max. If our other panelists don't want to answer some of these questions, you know, we don't have to. We can move on to another question. But if you do, please jump in.
Yeah.
Or go to the next question.
Yeah, no question. But yeah, please use your platforms. It's a platform, do it. It's like, and it's just fun as well, because you get to learn a lot by talking to people and having these conversations. And you never know who's listening. I think it's so easy, no matter what level you're at, to kind of, you forget that people are listening and that your voice actually has an effect. So don't take that kind of that resource for granted.
And the next question that we had, and I believe that this was actually directed towards Tana. This was during your explanation, just discussing your role of playing music, playing radio, making sure that your sets get played around the world. And I believe that this is what this person was referring to. They said, do you think that being played on American radio stations has a similar effect? And Aiden, please correct me if I'm misinterpreting your question. That was Aiden. That was a question from Aiden from KCSB.
I have a feeling I saw that question. I think it was relating to René, and because he was saying how playing at Coachella really affects the status of a band back at home.
Yeah. Well, I started a little festival in Pomona called Viva Pomona with the Glass House, and I don't think it matters the platform, because we've had bands from Chile or like Mexico come play, London, and yeah, it for sure helps. The media for sure picks it up, and it really helps the artists. I also have a show on DubLab. DubLab is a station in LA, like an online radio station, and yeah, we've had bands from all over the world. If they're in town, they come into the station, and we do a bilingual kind of segment, and we talk in Spanish and English, and for sure I feel like a lot of bands around South America or Mexico, because that's the area I mostly focus on, they want to come on DubLab, and they tune in to DubLab, and it feels, I mean, I've been told, but I talked to a lot of bands from Chiapas over the quarantine, and yeah, they for sure feel like there's community, and they we inspire each other to just close the gap. Yeah.
Cool, thank you so much. And there's one more question in the chat from Emma. DubLab is so cool. When is your show, René?
My show is every Monday from 10 in the morning to 12 noon. Yeah, I have an artist in 2 weeks. She's from Santo Domingo, from Dominican Republic, and she plays dembow music. And I've been talking to them on WhatsApp. And Mexican Spanish and Dominican Republic Spanish are two different things. And it's just funny because we don't understand our slang, or the slang that they use. And I'm like, what are you saying? Like on WhatsApp, like, ¿qué estás diciendo? But yeah, she's gonna be special guest DJing. So it's gonna be cool, I think.
Very cool. And I think that concludes the questions that we had from the chat. And I will pass it back to Eddie.
Well, all right, right on. Well, thank you everybody that joined us. Big shout out to our panelists for taking the time on a Saturday afternoon to stay with us and talk. I mean, I would definitely, if any of our panelists want to offer any more words or any more perspectives on any of this that you think that the audience here would find valuable, please do so. If not, all good.
I'm going to put my email in here. And if anybody has any questions, I love talking about this stuff, and offer any sort of support or questions that you have about like entering the music industry. I worked in music festivals. I've worked in corporate events as well. But a lot of different types. I can even share like online radios that I really like that might be cool to get your shows on. So please email me, and yeah, I would love to talk to you and answer any questions or help anybody.
It's super kind of you, Tana. Like my make a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do the same. I'll add my email. Yeah. Yes. I just wanted to like plug in, not plug in, but during quarantine, I didn't know how many states existed in Mexico, and I felt very uneducated on that topic and ashamed of myself. But there's 32 states, and I made friends in 32 states in Mexico, and I called the show or the segment Mexican Candy. So I feel like this past year I've made a lot of friends all over Mexico, like in islands and in indigenous communities and stuff. And a friend reached out to me maybe it's like 5 months ago. He said he wanted to do 7-inch records. He wanted to do a limited series of like 7-inch records, like a physical copy. And I pitched him the idea of doing Mexican Candy, which is the radio show evolving into like a physical form. So I thought it was really cool. It's like we're just building community and using just like old school ways of like having a record that outlasts me when I leave this earth, and it's building community and just a I don't know, just like a landmark for all these states and communities. So
Yeah.
Cool.
Fantastic. I saw someone
Yeah.
wanted. Did that get added?
What's that?
Just started talking to my team now.
Oh yeah.
Precious, who's our student manager, by the way, and has a show every Thursday.
Cool.
4 to 5. Did someone add a question? I saw somebody wanted to.
Someone did want to ask a question. I believe that was Jack. And Jack, maybe.
Oh, you know what? He DM'd me for some reason, so I'll read it out. It says, "Sorry if I missed anything like this, but as a white male with a radio show, I was wondering if you have any advice or good tips or things I could or should do to diversify or put across the right message."
He said, "My bad, I meant to send that to everyone." So the floor is any of the panelists.
I would say just making sure that you're listening to shows. I mean, an easy way is just listening to radio shows by people who are BIPOC, queer, or also just like making it, because I think one thing I've been thinking about a lot is how the pandemic, I think, made things more segregated, because people were forced to kind of hang out with who they had the closest connections to, which I think that, it'll be interesting to see what happens post pandemic. But I think it's really important to diversify your friend group. And if you're looking around you and you only have white friends, the white person, this doesn't count if you're in a place where there's not very many POC people, because there's many places like that. That's a problem. It's something to look at maybe. So just so I would say, like, yeah, making sure your friend circle stay diverse, I guess. And then also listening to BIPOC queer people and what they're putting out.
Yeah,
yes, don't tokenize, of course.
And I think as a DJ, you know, since everyone here is in college radio, it's probably a little bit easier to go outside of the mainstream, which hopefully will be a little bit more open to just non-white artists that you can, I mean, I think as a DJ, the best thing you can do is spread the message, right? Spread the art of people that aren't just white out there.
Yeah, exactly. And again, using your platform. So whether that means, like, you know, interviewing somebody, having a band play, a POC, BIPOC band, or yeah, that sort of thing too. Just again, using your platform to boost up people who have less of a voice. Especially with music, yeah. It's easy to get out there. So there's lots of BIPOC voices out there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's, and I mean, this has already been sort of intimated at, I feel like there's sort of I don't know that there's a right way to do this, honestly. I mean, my immediate instinct would be to sort of even step outside of music, and just being more informed about what's happening in the world, period. And if you have space in your show where you can talk about that sort of stuff, go for it. But like, if you play Japanese rap music, I'm not going to tell you, hey, you need to play more Black people, because your show is a Japanese rap show. You know what I mean? And I remember, and I won't get into the station, but I know there were a few stations. I don't know if they have this anymore, but there were stations in the network that had policies of you had to play every hour, you had to play 2 or more or 3 different genres of music, which I guess that's cool, but that just feels really prescriptive to me. And if you are the absolute authority in a certain kind of hardcore music, I don't want you to have to switch over suddenly to cumbia, unless you're really good at it. Like, why would you do that? You know what I mean? And so what I mean, again, to each their own, however they want to do it. But I mean, I would say, you know, for example, the fact that somebody's all of a sudden playing Black artists, to me, that don't do much for me. Just like, hey, I'm gonna play some Snoop Dogg. Like, that don't do much for me, you know what I mean? However, that being said, if that doesn't feel really authentic to you, I would say, you know, that switching up your playlist doesn't really feel authentic to you. Obviously, listening to other DJs, that's one option. You know, shouting them out on the show. Hey, if you like my stuff, I've been getting into this person. Maybe you want to go check that person out. That's an obvious one. But then again, you know, everybody does their shows differently. Some people talk in their shows, some people don't. I used to talk a lot in my shows. And so if that is something that feels authentic, again, it's about what feels authentic in your own show. if you have room to say, hey man, this has been going on, and here's some places where you can read up more about it. This is where I've been learning about it. You don't necessarily have to be giving your opinion, because you may not have a well-formed opinion, but you can say, hey, I've been learning more about XYZ from this place or from this person. Maybe check it out. You know what I mean? I think that's an option.
And also, oh, sorry, do you mind if I say one quick little thing? I was going to say that also just do some music research too, because that's something I only started doing recently, since I started really writing. And the world of music is so mythical and weird and crazy, and that will take you down so many beautiful rabbit holes too, and really give you an interesting understanding of will take you around the world. Like, it really will. So I highly recommend that too. Just doing research, like, it's fun because it's insane how mythical the history of music is.
Yeah.
Also, music, it was, I mean, historically just been such a, I mean, a lot of genres have been very, or at least partially colorblind in a good way, where, jazz was integrated before other things were, and, big bands, at least the musicians were. And I think there's just so many interesting stories down there. Like the one thing I don't know if anyone knows, but a guy named Johnny Otis from the 40s, and his son Shuggy. Johnny, basically grew up in a black area in Oakland, and he was Greek, and he was kind of racially ambiguous. And at some point he just said, I'm choosing to live my life as a black person because those are the people he was around, if he had to choose. And I'm not saying that's an example for anything. I'm just saying there's just these amazing stories through music that you can find that show, I think, a lot of, true unity and kind of a better example for the way people can actually be in society.
Yeah, history music is really crazy. Music is crazy. Oh my God, it's insane.
Well, unfortunately, we're up to the last moment. I know folks want to keep asking questions because this conversation has been fantastic. There's more panels that are happening. So I want a huge thank you to Dexter Thomas, Tana Yones, Max Burgos, René Contreras. Much appreciated you guys sharing your perspectives. It is appreciated. I learned a lot. I don't take it for granted that you're sharing all this knowledge that your life experience has given you. And thank you very much for sharing it with all these amazing DJs that are on here from these different stations. Keep doing great radio shows. Listen to your public radio, support it. Listen to your community college radio, support it. And we'll wrap it up. Thank you all very much. Thank you to my team at KUCR. Peace, everybody.
Bye.
I guess.
Thanks.
See you later.